Hey, what's up guys? Thanks for stopping by the channel. So for this video, we're going to be checking out this Tudor BB Pro, which was released earlier this year, and it's the brand's first GMT watch that is in a sub 40mm case diameter. Now having a mid-sized GMT is something that the Tudor fan base has been requesting from the brand for quite some time, so it's nice to see Tudor is making a concerted effort to listen to their customers. However, there are some aspects to this timepiece that do keep it from being the perfect everyday watch in my opinion, so my hope throughout the course of this review is to provide some insight into what Tudor could do to improve its GMT, and as well as what the brand has done really well, because at the end of the day, it's a solid release, even if I do have some mixed feelings about it. Now, as usual, I'll quickly run through the numbers on this guy, and then I'll go into some of the more granular details of the design and wearability. So at a glance, you do have a 39mm case diameter, and then if you flip this watch to the side, it does have a 47.5mm lug-to-lug dimension. In terms of total thickness, this watch is 14.7mm from the bottom of the case back, and then to the top of a highly domed sapphire crystal. And the OEM bracelet does sit between an even 20mm lug opening. And this is Tudor's classic 3-link oyster style bracelet with faux rivets on it, but it does taper nicely from 20mm at the head of the watch down to 16mm before you get to the newly developed clasp. Now this clasp is a huge improvement over previous iterations of the Black Bay models because it is more comfortable on the wrist, and it does have the T-Fit micro adjustment system that allows for on-the-fly adjustment of a total clasp length. And the system is fairly easy to use and isn't overly bulky. So on the wrist, the Black Bay Pro is nicely balanced between the head of the watch and the bracelet. Sized up for my 7.5-inch wrist, this package does weigh in at a hefty 168 grams, and because of the slab-sided nature of the watch, there is a fair bit of wrist presence, even though you can consider this more of a mid-sized GMT. Now, overall, the thickness is something that has dominated many of the watch enthusiast conversations when the watch was first announced. So, is this watch too thick? Well, my answer to that is if you're thinking of this watch being part of the Black Bay 58 family, then yeah, you're going to be disappointed given some of the other case dimensions that are inherent for this model line. However, if you do start comparing this watch to other GMT options in the mid-tier luxury segment, then it does seem fairly comparable to the height of many other watches from, say, the likes of Grand Seiko's or even my recently reviewed Longines Zulu Time that hover around the 14mm mark when you're considering the thickness of these GMTs. I think the main difference is that Grand Seiko and Longines do a much better job at breaking up the mass of the mid case with different character lines and differential finishes. Whereas when you're considering this Tudor, it's just a solid slab of polished steel. So this is one area that I do hope Tudor can improve upon for future iterations of the Black Bay Pro. Now with respect to the dial design from a Tudor Black Bay Pro, I do think it does borrow a bit heavy from a Rolex Explorer 2, the reference 1655 in the early 1970s. Is it a direct homage to the 1655 Explorer? Well, I don't think so, because at the end of the day, the Black Bay Pro is a 200-meter diver. It does have those distinctive Tudor snowflake hands, an oversized crown that is free of crown guards, and there is no cyclops over the date, which is something that I actually prefer. All that being said, the affixed 24-hour bezel and the faux patina for the markers and on the GMT hand are very much in line with what you would find on a vintage Explorer 2. In fact, I would argue that Tudor maybe went a bit too far with that yellow or greenish discoloration that you find on the applied hour markers, and I would have preferred if I kept them more of a stark white color, something you often see on, say, the dials of a Tudor Pelagos. Now, one redeeming aspect of these applied markers, though, is that they're a composite ceramic material, so there's no actual like silver surrounds to them, and they are generously lume filled. So the low light legibility of this watch is excellent due to the even lume application on these ceramic hour markers and on the hands of this timepiece as well. And even getting orientation in the dark is quite easy because of those distinctive snowflake hands and the triangle marker at the 12 o'clock position. So the automatic movement inside this watch is exactly the same as previous GMT models from Tudor, which is to say it runs an in-house caliber MT5652. This is a COSC certified movement with 70 hours of power reserve, and it's also a true GMT movement that allows for isolated adjustment of a local hour hand of this timepiece when you pop out the crown and you put it into the first position. And if you do pull out the crown all the way, you can hack the movement and you can set the GMT as well as local time to any reference that you want. So this movement is inherently thicker than most at being just under 8 millimeters in height, and I do think that this does contribute to the overall heft and thickness of the watch. I think it would be prudent if Tudor does develop an updated GMT movement for the watches in the Black Bay 58 line in the future, so they can trim down on the overall thickness. And this would also keep it more in line with something you would see in a Rolex Explorer 2 or like a GMT Master 2 as well. At the end of the day though, this is a workhorse movement that is very accurate, and I haven't had any issues with it when owning the previous Black Bay GMT variants, such as the stainless steel version or the root beer as well. A subtle refinement that I do enjoy about the Black Bay Pro is that oversized 7.5 millimeter crown. It's got a very grippy texture to it, and it's easier to operate than most GMTs out there. It also threads into place very well, and it gives you assurance that you can actually meet that 200 meter water resistance depth rating. Other refinements about this timepiece, which I've kind of already touched on, are the use of applied ceramic markers and not just being printed onto the dial, and as well as the updated T-fit clasp. But let's quickly discuss the price for this watch, which is just over $4,600 Canadian when you purchase this watch on the bracelet. Now you can save yourself about $300 if you buy it on the strap, but I would strongly advocate that you go the bracelet route for the benefit of a T-fit clasp system. And it also does just balance out the overall heft of the head of the watch too. Now at this price, I do think it's a fair value for what you're getting, but then again, the Longines Zulu time was also released this year at over $1,000 less. And if you got a wrist size to pull off the 42 millimeter Longines GMT, I would actually probably suggest you go that route and save yourself some money. In full disclosure, I wasn't actually anticipating buying this watch. My local AD called me up one day when they had it in stock, and I'm really just trying to build a nice relationship with them, and the sales rep over there is very enthusiastic. So in closing, I just wanted to give you my thoughts on who I think this watch is for. Well, if you don't have a large collection and you're looking for a watch that's very functional and robust, then this can be a very good daily driver for you. If, however, you're like me and you have a large collection already that does include Tudor and Rolex models like the FXD or the Explorer 1, then I might think you might already have a lot of the watch's DNA and design characteristics covered, at which point I might be more inclined to go with a slightly different type of GMT. But as always guys, be sure you let me know your thoughts on this release from Tudor in the comment section of this video. And if you do enjoy the content, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell icon so you can stay up to date on all my latest reviews. Thanks again for watching, and I can't wait to catch you guys in the next video.